Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, Austin Bar Association President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. Today I'm honored to introduce Justice Gisela Triana. Justice Triana has been a first in so many of her legal positions. In 2004, she was elected as the first Latina judge to preside over the 200th District Court. In 2018, she became the first Latina justice of the Third Court of Appeals. She's been recognized as Judge of the Year by the Hispanic Issue Section of the State Bar of Texas, received the Habla con Orgullo Award from Habla, the Hispanic Advocates Business Leaders of Austin, and this past year she received the President's Award at the Hispanic Heritage Luncheon presented by the Hispanic Bar Association of Austin. She has also been recognized as a Woman of Distinction by the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. Justice Triana has spent her entire career giving back to the legal community and the community at large. She served on the board of Loyal Referral Services of Austin, the Travis County Child Protective Services Board, the Travis County Bail Bond Board, the Travis County Children's Justice Task Force, and the Travis County Juvenile Board. She has also been a member of the Robert Calvert Inn of Court and founding member of the Barbara Jordan Inn of Court. For the community at large, she served on the board of Austin Recovery, chair of the board for Middle Earth Youth and Family Services, member of the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and was a founding member of the Hispanic Technology Institute of Austin. She's a mother of 5, an accomplished community leader, and someone to be admired. I am proud to introduce Justice Gisela Triana. I don't know if I've embarrassed you enough.
Oh my God, am I turning red? I feel like I'm competing with my shirt here. So.
Well, it's about to get worse. This is sort of an episode of This Is Your Life, and we want to hear all about you. The next most embarrassing thing I have to talk to you about is we have mutual friends that have described you as a literal genius. You are the daughter of Cuban immigrants, and you spoke Spanish only until you were 5. You graduated high school at 16, college at 19, and you could have done anything in the world with how smart you are. Why did you want to be a lawyer?
Well, you're very kind, Amanda. I couldn't have done anything that I wanted. I definitely know that I could not homeschool my children. I would have not had the patience to do that. And I think that they're better for it, and they're very happy that I didn't. But I, at a very young age, and I think I consider myself lucky. You can think of it as unlucky because you might think of it as kind of close-minded. But I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer when I was little. And I think that came from a couple of different places. So, my parents... And I can't tell my story of who I am without talking about my parents. They came from Cuba in 1962. They were 18 years old. And, at that time, if you'll remember, Castro had just taken over and had decided that Cuba was going to become a communist country. And so they came here without knowing a word of English, without any money. At the time, I think they actually would only let you leave with 5 different clothing, not articles, but actually like 5 different things that you could use. And so they came here without anything. And I grew up hearing about these horrible stories of what had happened to my family in Cuba. My family, was a family of immigrants in Cuba and became then a family of immigrants here in the United States. I have a whole section of my mother's family from my father who came from Lebanon to Cuba and had gone through all of that. I had on my mother's side, on her mother's side, she had a grandfather who came from France to Cuba. And then on my father's side, my grandfather had come from Spain to Cuba. So in a land of immigrants and communism, they all came to Cuba for a better life than what they had. And then sure enough, here comes Castro and communism, and everything they had worked so hard for just poofed, vanished. And so I grew up hearing all the stories. My grandfather was, taken one night, in the middle of the night, came knocking on the door. He used to be a pilot for the Air Force in Cuba. And actually, I think there was an Air Force. I don't even know if they had an Air Force, but whether the military, he flew cargo planes. He wasn't a jet pilot or anything like that. And they came in the middle of the night, banged on the door and said, "We need to take you," and didn't give my grandmother or my dad or his brothers any reason why exactly they were taking him or where they were taking him. They didn't know where he was going. Later on, they released him and, things were okay. But things like that, my great-grandfather lost his he was from Spain, and he was not a man of wealth, but he had worked hard enough to have, a plot of land that he himself would work on. And, I heard the stories, and I actually met him because he moved here as well to the United States and lived to the ripe old age of 92. And, the stories is he was on his farm, working the oxen, and here come two guys in a military Jeep and say, hey, this is no longer yours. There was the agrarian reform in Cuba. And so anybody who had anything bigger than 5 acres lost it all, didn't get to keep his house. And so he, was already elderly but didn't really understand what's going on. So he kind of kept on, with the oxen. And then they're like, you don't understand. This no longer belongs to you. You have to leave. And so, he takes off the reins and walks back to the house, and, they took it, and he had to go live in Havana with his, daughter at that point. And so growing up hearing those stories, there was always this feeling of unfairness in with government and in life. And then at the same time, I was going to school here, learning about, this great system that we have, this legal system where the government, the Bill of Rights, where the government can't take your life or your property or your way to make an income, without due process. They can't put you in jail without specifically telling you why they're putting you in jail and what you're being charged with. They can't take your property and tell you, it belongs to the government now. And I fell in love with that concept. And it seemed to me that, that's the way it should be. And I wanted to make sure that I wanted to be, part of the process that would prevent my family from having to migrate yet another time somewhere else. And so I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And, my grandmother, God rest her soul, she used to tell me all the time, I think like most lawyers probably, I was very argumentative when I was a child. Still am, some people would say. And she's like, oh, she's going to be, I said, oh, well, she's going to be a lawyer. And so I knew that that's what I wanted to do. That's where my passion lied. And I have been the better for it. I've never second doubted that. I was born to be a lawyer. And so that's kind of where I ended up.
That's amazing. They say that generational trauma lives within you. And if that premise is true, then it lives within you for the purpose of justice.
Yes.
You hold all of your family's prior injustice so that you can serve justice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was a child, probably with an overly developed sense of justice, the ones that always got in fights with other people. My parents didn't understand why. Why do you have to? Because if a rule didn't make sense, or if I felt somebody was being treated unfairly, I would not keep my mind. So I had to share it.
So you knew you had to be a lawyer, and then you decided to be a judge, but not just any judge. You have been all the judges. You have been a municipal court judge, justice of the peace, county court at law judge, district court judge, and now a justice on the Third Court of Appeals. What drew you to public service as a career rather than staying in private practice?
Growing up, I always wanted to be a trial judge, right? I grew up with Perry Mason. As I was older, with Boston Legal. And, that just seemed like that's where the action was, and that's where you right wrongs. And so I always knew that I wanted to be a trial lawyer. As I went through law school and as I got older, I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor. Talk about the white hat for sure. And so I started at the Travis County Attorney's Office when I graduated from UT Law and loved my job. Loved my job. I was very young. I was 22 at the time, and just thought, I was wearing the white hat. Did that, and then went to the Secretary of State's office, the elections division. I started thinking that maybe, I might want to have some kind of a political career. And then went out on my own and, did what most people do when they go out on their own after people don't necessarily just come, asking for you to be their lawyer. Started doing criminal defense work, did CPS work, did family work, did kind of anything that came in. And then I realized something. One, I love being in the courtroom. I just loved it. The exhilaration of trying cases is an amazing thing. It's not for everybody, but it definitely was for me. And then I noticed that, maybe it's not necessarily one side wears the white hat all the time. There's people that wear white hats on both sides of the aisle, both in criminal cases, in family cases, in CPS cases, in civil cases, any case. And I saw myself gravitating toward big picture. Like in my family cases, if I was representing a parent, I was really interested in what's the best interest for the children. I've always told young lawyers, you can pick your clients. You don't have to just represent somebody that you don't agree with or that you think is a bad actor, regardless of needing to pay the bills. And I was very fortunate that I did. And, even with a good client, I would always come to okay, but why are we doing this? How is this advancing the ball? Why is this in the best interest of your children? So that person, the other side, bad actor, granted. But how can we protect them? And very much of what a judicial role is, right? More than an advocate role. And I realized at a young age that I really thought that I'd be good as a judge, and I wanted to try that. And then I started at the lowest possible place I could because I didn't want to screw anything up. I mean, I thought that that's a big responsibility, and I didn't want to feel like I had made a wrong decision and somehow somebody had suffered big consequences. And so I started at municipal court. And they do a lot of, they do the arraignment, they do a lot of important stuff. But in trials, we're dealing with misdemeanors and things that you're not sending anybody to jail for a long, long time. And did it and loved it. And, got over my fear of I don't know enough and how can I pretend, the whole imposter syndrome, which we are so good as Latinas in having, and, worked my way up. And it was a step at a time. And so I, ran for justice of the peace and never looked back. And to me, that's been my calling. Sometimes I look at, we're having our 35th law school reunion in a week, as a matter of fact. And I look at some of my classmates, who have gone and had great careers and have done wonderful things and have made a lot more money than I have. But I couldn't have, if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't have changed a thing. It is quite impactful to be able to help people. And that was my main goal in law school, which is I wanted to make sure that people got justice, and I wanted to be a part of that. And what better way to do that than by being a judge?
In today's episode, we have Judge Lora Livingston, first African-American woman to preside over a district court in Travis County. Judge Livingston has been a true leader for the legal community, dedicating her career to promoting access to justice for all. She's been active on the boards of the Texas Access to Justice Foundation, the Texas Access to Justice Commission, the National Association of IALTA Programs, the Texas Center for the Judiciary, and the Board of Volunteer Legal Services of Central Texas. Judge Livingston has been recognized for her accomplishments at the local, state, and national level. She has received the Spirit of Excellence Award by the American Bar Association Commission on Racial and Ethnic Diversity in the Profession, the Distinguished Service Award from the National Center for State Courts, the Texas Access to Justice Commission Pro Bono Champion Award, the Texas Equal Access to Justice Foundation Harold F. Kleinman Award, the Lone Star Girl Scouts Women of Distinction Award, the Distinguished Lawyer Award by the Austin Bar Foundation, the Pathfinder Award from the Travis County Women Lawyers Association, the AISD Community Service Award, the Lotus Award from the Asian Family Support Services, and the Jurisprudence Award from the Anti-Defamation League of Austin. Judge Livingston has also been widely credited with establishing two important initiatives in Travis County: the Travis County Self-Help Center to assist self-represented litigants with legal information, and, of course, the establishment of the Travis County Civil and Family Courts facility. Judge Livingston has accomplished so much in her career and has a strong legacy, and has been described as a mentor to many, including previous guest Betty Bayi Torres, Executive Director of the Texas Access to Justice Foundation. I am honored to have with us today Judge Lora Livingston.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, Judge, today is sort of a version of This Is Your Life. So everyone knows about your accomplishments since you became a judge, but I want to talk first about how you became a lawyer. I understand that in college you thought you would either go into journalism or the law, and in theory, both professions let you use your voice to help people. So why did you choose being a lawyer?
Well, that's it. I wanted to use my voice to help people who couldn't use theirs, in a nutshell. I mean, that was the whole point. Both litigation and journalism are really about storytelling. And when you're an advocate, your job is to tell your client's story in a way that resonates with the fact finder or the decision maker. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell a story, I wanted to make a point, and I wanted to help people. And both those professions, I thought, gave me an opportunity to do that. I ultimately settled on being a lawyer because I thought that the way in which I might be able to help the voiceless would be a more powerful contribution, frankly. And so I ultimately chose the law. And I was inspired by some wonderful mentors and some wonderful role models in the legal profession. And so ultimately I settled on the law.
I love the way you said that. Tell a story, make a point, and help people. It's a very concise way to describe what it is that you've done with your career.
It's why I became a lawyer in the first place.
So you started off as a Reginald Heber Smith Community Lawyer Fellow, a Reggie. You were assigned to the Legal Aid Society of Central Texas in Austin. And now there's a Lora Livingston Fellowship. So why are these fellowships so important for lawyers?
Well, the fellowship is really significant in a couple of ways. When I was going to law school, first-year students, particularly first-year students of color, had a very difficult time getting the attention of big firm recruiters. The big firms would send recruiters to law schools during, the fall semester, and they would interview folks whose grades were no really better or worse than the students of color, and yet the students of color had a very difficult time finding employment for summer jobs, particularly first-year students of color. So the scholarship, which is really the brainchild of Judge Eric Shepard, his vision was to assist particularly those first-year students of color who might otherwise have been overlooked. And so along with Leslie Dipple and Tony Nelson and then Rudy Mateer and Judge Naranjo joined us, we got together and decided that the way to really make an impact, particularly for those first-year students of color, would be to create this fellowship that would not ignore them, that would recognize their talent, that would see something in them that we thought we could inspire and mentor and ultimately assist them in becoming the lawyer we knew they could be. And so they spend 5 weeks at the courthouse working with judges. They spend 5 weeks in a law firm learning what it's like to be a summer associate. And that 10-week program really gives them an opportunity that they might not otherwise have. And I'm so proud of the fellowship program. We started with 3 students and 3 law firms, and now we're up to over 9 law firms and 9 students in the summer, and it has been an absolute labor of love. Our students and fellows have gone on to Fortune 500 companies and governments and big law firms and small law firms and government service. It's been an absolute joy to see these students blossom in the way that they have, and I'm so proud.
So maybe the same way that you're part of a class of Reggies, and there are decades of Reggies that still get together. Maybe one day there will be the Livingstons.
That's, well, I don't know that we'll call them that, but there is a plan, in fact, for a reunion of all of our fellows because we want them to reach back as well, to mentor new fellows, to reach back and mentor the law students that are coming through law school now, to talk about their experience as a fellow, but also their experience in the work world, their experience studying for the bar examination and passing it and going on to a wonderful career in the law. So we have now enough of a cohort of fellows that we think that we can reach back and grow the fellowship program in significant ways, but also connect students who have already graduated and become lawyers with students who are coming through the fellowship program now. And that synergy, we hope, will just create a whole new kind of relationship that will be beneficial to both groups.
Yeah, and it's really important to have sort of that circular appeal so that folks don't just get a fellowship and then go out into the community, but that they come back and that they're able to keep giving back.
I'm all about paying it forward and paying it back. People helped me. People were role models and mentors for me. I want to be a mentor and a role model for others. I want to help other people be mentors and role models. And the more we pay it forward and pay it back, the more people that will ultimately benefit from the work that we do. It's a great program. It's a wonderful experience for students. And as I said, it's an opportunity in many cases for folks to find employment, to spend time and be exposed to what happens at the courthouse, to find employment and be exposed to what goes on in a big law firm as a summer associate, particularly for students who might not have otherwise had that opportunity. So I'm really, really proud of the program.
Well, that is a wonderful program. And if you need donations, we can put a link in the podcast notes so that folks can keep donating to this at the Austin Bar Foundation.
Well, I am so grateful to the Austin Bar Association for the partnership. It's an Austin Bar program, really, and the leadership of yourself and other presidents, and of course your amazing executive director, Delane Ward, all of whom have helped make this program what it is today. So we're all on our fellowship committee, we're all grateful for the support that we receive from the bar, and I'm sure that Leslie Dipple and others will be in touch for firm donations and other things, since, of course, judges can't make such a pitch.
But speaking of paying it forward and paying it back, in 1999, you became the first African-American woman to preside over a district court in Travis County. What implications did you think that would have then, and what do they still have today?
So when I was sworn in, I think I said something like, I'm proud to be the first, but I hope I won't be the last. And I still feel that way today. And fortunately, I'm not the last. There have been others that have gone on to hold positions like the one that I held. And I'm so, so proud of the other judges who have held similar positions. Brenda Kennedy, for example, was a judge long before I became a judge, but then she came onto the district bench after I became the first African-American woman to serve in that position. So I might have been the first district judge, but not the first African-American woman judge in Travis County. Judge Harriet Murphy preceded both Brenda Kennedy and I. And so, the legacies that started, the shoulders that we stand on, are meant to provide a foundation for others to stand on our shoulders. We stood on shoulders. We want people to stand on our shoulders, and we want people to stand on those shoulders, and on and on and on. And so while I'm extremely proud to be able to say that I was the first African-American woman in Travis County to be elected to a district court, I said it then and I'll say it again. I'm so glad I won't be the last. We need people in the community to be reflective of the community. We need judges to be reflective of the community. We need police officers to be reflective of the community. We need teachers to be reflective of the community. We need business leaders to be reflective of the community. And the more we can build on those legacies and continue to provide broad shoulders and stepping stones for people to be uplifted in our community, the better the community will be. So I'm really proud of that, but I'm hoping that I can remain proud of the legacy that will be built as a result of the work that we're doing today.
I think you will. This last round of swearing-in ceremonies this year had so many women judges, particularly women of color. So when I was chatting with Justice Gisela Triana, we were joking about how we hope one day that this will just be commonplace.
Exactly. That we won't think of it as an anomaly, or we won't think of it as a milestone. It'll just be the reality, because it should be the reality, right?
That's
As
right.
I said, the bench should be reflective of the community. Every walk of life should be reflective of the community. Every profession should be reflective of the community. And the only way to do that is for us to work hard to make sure that we elect folks that are from the community, who want to give back to the community, who understand the struggles of the community, and who are willing to do the work that it will take to better the community. And as long as we keep doing that, we are going to live in an amazing community.
So when I think about 1999, it's actually not that long ago, even though it was a milestone and it's historic. Are there challenges that you saw or that you faced in 1999 that you think are still around today?
It's funny because in some ways it seems like yesterday, and in some ways it seems like a really long time ago. Lately, I've been thinking about my life before the pandemic and since the pandemic. But back, in the early 2000s, I thought about my life before 1999 and after 2000. I mean, there are milestones and significant events in your life that really mark a significant era in your life in some ways. And so for me, those are some of them. The pandemic and kind of the transition out of the 1990s into the 2000s, and then, of course, into the 21st century as a whole, right? And so it's in some ways very familiar because it isn't that long ago, and in some ways a lifetime ago.
In today's episode, we talked to a guest who is truly a first. Judge Orlinda Naranjo was the first Latina elected to a countywide judicial seat in 1994 when she was elected to lead the Travis County Court at Law No. 2. She served in that role until 2006 when she became the judge of the 419th Judicial District Court. Judge Naranjo has accomplished so much in her career. She has served on the State Commission for Judicial Conduct, the Texas Judicial Council, the first ever Texas Indigent Defense Task Force, the National Consortium on Racial and Ethnic Fairness in the Courts, and chaired the Juvenile Justice Committee, which eliminated the ticketing of students for Class C misdemeanors. Judge Naranjo is a two-time president of the Robert Calvert Inn of Court, has served as vice president of districts for the National Association of Women Judges, chair of the State Bar of Texas Standing Committee on Jury Service, and is an active member of the Hispanic National Bar Association, Hispanic Bar Association of Austin, Austin Bar Association, Travis County Women Lawyers Association, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. She is also the board member of a new organization, Texas Latinx Judges. She is the recipient of the Austin Bar Association's David Walter Community Service Award, the Outstanding Latina Leader Award for Avance, Woman of Distinction Award from the Girl Scout Council of Texas, and the Corazon Award from Con Mi Madre. I am honored to introduce Judge Orlinda Naranjo. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure.
So I think we know a lot about what happened once you became a judge, but I want to start with, how did you get there? What was your background like? How did you become a lawyer? How did you get to that place where you wanted to do that?
Well, I do think that background, your experiences, your life experiences are really important to get where you are, today. I grew up in northern New Mexico in Espanola. I'm one of 7 kids, and my mom and dad did not have an education. My mom went to the 8th grade, and she was very proud of that. My dad to the 6th grade. My mom worked as a maid and then as a cook in a middle school, and then my father, heavy equipment operator. And that's what they did. But they really impressed upon us hard work strong work ethics, and also how important education was. And it was an opportunity for each of one of us to get ahead, was through education. I'll always remember my dad would show us his hands, and he says, I don't want you to have hands that look like this. And they were calloused and broken and things, and because of what he did for a living. And he really impressed upon us how important education was. And then I had a heartache at the age of 15. My father passed away of a massive heart attack, in fact, in front of me. And that was heartbreaking. And a year later, I ended up a year and a half later, becoming a teen parent, marrying my husband, also a young man, teen. And that marriage didn't last very long. We had a lot of obstacles to overcome, primarily raising a child as teenagers. But we got a divorce. I was divorced by the age of 21. And it's at that time that I decided I was a good student. I was always college-bound. Again, education was so important. But I had this obstacle that I had created myself, but in the sense that getting pregnant as a young teenager and raising a child, got divorced, and decided that I was going to go to college. I'll always remember, because I had a great job at the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratories as a secretary, and everybody was trying to get into the lab, because that was the best paying in northern New Mexico. And I even had a security clearance. And I remember I told my mom, I'm going to quit my job and go to college. And she said, my gosh, in Spanish, mijita, ¿qué pasa? You've got the best job. Why would you do that? I said, Mom, because I don't want to be a secretary all my life. Not that that's a fine profession, but I wanted to get an education. So I went to a small university in northern New Mexico, Las Vegas. It's Highlands University. a state school. I lived in the, family dormitories with my daughter and got a degree in biology with a minor in chemistry. I really had thought I'd become a nurse. And I'll always remember, and I should have gone to nursing school instead of, but anyway, that's what I did. And I'll always remember my physics professor saying to me, "Why a nurse? Why not a doctor?" And to me, that was like, what? Me, a doctor? I can't even imagine that. Because I didn't have any lawyers, any doctors in my family. Anyway, so I ended up applying to medical school and got in. And, after 2 years of medicine, I said, this is not for me. So I spent a year actually recruiting minority students to come to medical school at the University of New Mexico School of Medicine. I was, really targeting, science majors, engineer majors, and things like that to try to get them to think about medicine as a career, even though I was leaving it. But then I applied to law school. It was interesting because I would study at the law school. So a lot of my friends were lawyers or law students. And so I applied to law school and was accepted. I got my law degree, and one of the most important days in my life that I can still remember as if it were today was being on that stage as I was getting my diploma, a Juris Doctorate, and looking down at my family, which filled a lot of rows because I had uncles and aunts and all of that. My whole extended family, we're a big family, and looking down at my mother. And tears just rolling down her eyes about how proud she was. And even today, it brings a lot of tears because I think what happens is that people, you have obstacles, you may create them, and you overcome them. Now, remember that we tend to think that our teen parents cannot overcome the obstacle of being a single parent or raising a child, but you can. And I did. And it was a wonderful day. I can always remember that. And my daughter was there. And as a single parent in college and law school and medical school, I was a single parent raising her. And all those financial struggles. I mean, that's what I tell kids that I speak to is to say, look, you may not have even the support of your family. I was very fortunate that I did. And my mom couldn't give me money. She was so proud that she could help me with $20, or she would always commit to buying my daughter a winter coat every other year. She had to always get it bigger so it could last her 2 years. And my family would help me as much as they could financially. But I took out loans, grants. I knew any organization that was giving out a scholarship, I would apply for it. And that's the way I put myself through school and came out with some college debt, not like what the kids are coming out with today at all. But, and I graduated from law school and had worked for a law firm, and they offered me a job, and I took it and was very happy there in New Mexico working for the law firm of Butt, Thorne & Bear, which is a very well-respected mid-sized law firm in Albuquerque.
Do you think that your background and all the support you received is why mentorship remains so important for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know how important it makes to have a champion, so a cheerleader helping you. And remember that there are so many kids that say, I could never go to law school. I could never be a lawyer. I don't know a lawyer. I don't even know what that is. I mean, from the perspective of what does a day in the life of a lawyer look like, or the day in the life of a judge look like? Do they look like me, And I always try to impress how important it is to know that they can make it, that they can do it. They may have obstacles. I'm not saying it's easy. And they'll have to work hard, but they have to have a commitment, they have to have a goal, and they have to have a vision. Mm-hmm. And that vision, that's why I like, and I always try to speak to them. Hablo en español, so I always try to let them know that I do this little routine, like I say, okay, how many of you are raised by, a single parent, so that, either because they're divorced, they never married, or they passed away, and we raise our hand, so we start sharing our commonalities because we have so much in common. How many of you spoke English was your second language? We raise our hands, and so that they understand that. How many of you, your parents do not have a formal education? Raise our hands. So again, we're seeing the commonalities, especially as I get older. They don't see how can they have anything in common with a judge, much as a Latina who's much older than them. But anyway, I always try to identify the commonalities that we have.